Is this thing on? In the last one, I went over utilitarianism and deontology and virtue ethics. And those are the foundations of ethics. Those are sort of how we determine what is right, what is wrong. What about what is neutral? What is not necessarily wrong, but not necessarily right either? Many argue sort of neutrality fundamentally can't really truly exist. There's always going to be some form of determination over whether something is good or something is bad. And so in those circumstances, basically, when you attribute what is good, what is bad, then you just go with whatever is the most good or whatever is the ultimate good. Most versus ultimate is sort of your classical utilitarian deontology distinction. And then you got the sort of what is more essential to the good character traits for yourself. Now, when it comes to neutrality, my own position is a little bit different. Neutrality could just be a confluence of good and bad derived from a consequence of a certain behavior. And so neutrality, essentially, the balance of it, means there isn't a right, an ultimate sort of right that counteracts the wrong that is received from it, or the sort of inverse, the amount of wrong being done has an equal value to the amount of right being done. But fundamentally, neutrality is really just observation. Observation by itself is neutral. You see something, and other people see it, then you are in agreement of its existence. And its existence is the neutrality of it. How we interpret its existence, that's when ethical norms, ethical beliefs interact with our own reasoning, with our own commentary, with our own language, with our own logic. That is when there is an intercept. How we interpret behavior, how we interpret actions, how we interpret comments is what leads to impact from norms, impact from beliefs, impact from actions. So, neutrality is the thing itself. And then you can assign traits to it, you can assign ethical elements to it. Then, thus, it creates sort of an expectation of what is good and what is right. And sort of, if you follow sort of the non-cognitivist, when you have sort of indisputable facts, when you have indisputable observations, then you're dealing with things that can have truth value. Statements that can be observed have truth value, whereas statements that cannot be observed, do they truly have truth value? Some say yes, some say no. non-cognitives say that any statements that cannot be observed are essentially saying this thing good, this thing bad. They're making emotive comments. And emotions can be fleeting. Emotions also sort of, when emotions aren't more than fleeting, it's when you get into moods in terms of psychology. So another comment to bring into this sort of discussion on what is neutrality is sort of the is-ought debate in philosophy. The is-ought debate basically says you can't make an ought from an is. So from an observation, you can't say this because you observe this is how the world should be. But I think it works in reverse too. You are saying this is how the world should be does not make it how the world is. Sort of in the historical context, it was defending ethics as its own branch, because a lot of it was sort of metaphysics and epistemology were sort of the leading branches of philosophical thought, and it was defending ethics for its value too. So what does this mean? If you can't derive an ought from an is, then, and we are going to inverse this now, we're going to say you can't derive an is from an ought. What fundamentally you're saying is things that you think are good does not necessarily lead to those things becoming more existent in behavior, more existent in the real world, more existent in how people behave. Just because you say it's good does not mean it becomes wide practice. But the counter is, just because you say something exists doesn't mean that it's good. Just in case you say something is how people behave doesn't mean it's how people should behave. So both the is and the ought section, to me, fundamentally is sort of how we read what is neutral. Neutral could be an ought statement, but it can also be an is statement, and that makes it more challenging because neither really can affect one another. And so what is neutral? Is it fully just being an enlightened centrist? Is it fully just being in the middle, not rocking the boat, staying the course? The status quo, is that neutral? Is the status quo neutral? Maybe yes, maybe no. Neutral, to me, is fundamentally an observation. To me, it's fundamentally an observation, an agreed upon observation. That's what neutral is. If you can't agree upon the observations, then you're having greater difficulties in terms of your communication. Anyways, these are just my thoughts. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. Definitely want to say thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your time and energy and focus. And I will see you in the next one.